Marcus Thompson had always been a simple man who preferred the quiet solitude of his mountain cabin to the hustle and bustle of city life. At 62 years old, he had worked as a surveyor for over 4 decades, mapping land boundaries and property lines across 3 states. His weathered hands told the story of countless days spent outdoors with measuring tools, and his keen eye for detail had made him one of the most respected land surveyors in the region. The cabin itself was nothing spectacular by modern standards. Built in 1952 by his grandfather, William Thompson, it sat on what appeared to be a modest 2-acre plot surrounded by towering pine trees and granite outcroppings. The structure was solid timber frame construction with a stone foundation and a metal roof that had weathered countless mountain storms. Marcus had inherited the property when his grandfather passed away 30 years ago, and had spent every weekend and vacation maintaining and improving the rustic retreat. What made the cabin special was not its appearance, but its history. William Thompson had been a shrewd businessman in the post-war era, when land was cheap and the mountainous region was considered too remote for development. He had purchased not just the visible 2 acres where the cabin sat, but had quietly acquired mineral rights and subsurface ownership. 2 vast tracts of surrounding wilderness through a series of complex legal transactions that most people never bothered to investigate or understand. The original deed and supporting documents were stored in a fireproof safe in the cabin basement, along with survey maps, geological reports, and correspondence dating back to the 1940s. Marcus had always known about these papers, but had never given them much thought since the surrounding area remained undeveloped forest for decades. His grandfather had been secretive about his business dealings and had only told Marcus that the family owned more than what met the eye. For 30 years, Marcus had enjoyed peaceful weekends at the cabin, hiking the mountain trails, fishing in the nearby stream, and maintaining the property without any interference from neighbors or local authorities. The nearest town was 15 miles down a winding mountain road, and the cabin was so isolated that Marcus sometimes went entire weekends without seeing another human being. This solitude was exactly what he craved after spending his work weeks dealing with property disputes and boundary conflicts in his surveying business. The tranquility began to change. 5 years ago, when developers started eyeing the mountain region for upscale residential communities, the natural beauty combined with improved road access and high-speed internet availability made the area attractive to wealthy city dwellers. Looking for mountain retreats and permanent residences, Marcus watched with growing concern as bulldozers began clearing forest on the far side of the mountain and construction crews started building what would become Pine Valley Estates. Pine Valley Estates was marketed as an exclusive gated community, featuring luxury homes with panoramic mountain views. The development company had purchased several hundred acres and planned to build 200 custom homes ranging in price from $800,000 to $2 million. The community would feature its own golf course, tennis courts, clubhouse, and network of private roads, all maintained by a homeowners association with strict architectural guidelines and landscaping requirements. Construction proceeded rapidly, and within 3 years the first phase of homes was completed and occupied by their new owners. These were successful professionals from nearby cities who paid premium prices for their mountain paradise and expected their investment to be protected. Through rigorous enforcement of community standards, the homeowners association they established was particularly aggressive about maintaining property values and eliminating anything they viewed as incompatible with their upscale neighborhood aesthetic. From his cabin, Marcus could see some of the new construction through the trees and occasionally heard the sounds of landscaping equipment and construction vehicles. However, his property was separated from the new development by what appeared to be several hundred yards of forest, so he assumed there would be no direct conflicts. The developers had built their access roads and utilities on what they claimed was their own property, and Marcus had no reason to believe otherwise. The first sign of trouble came on a crisp October morning when Marcus arrived at his cabin for a weekend retreat and found a certified letter taped to his front door. The letter was from the Pine Valley Estates Homeowners Association and was signed by the association president, Robert Wilson. The tone was formal but unmistakably hostile, as it informed Marcus that his cabin was in violation of community standards and architectural guidelines. According to the letter, Marcus's property was now considered part of the Pine Valley Estates community, whether he liked it or not, and was subject to the same rules and regulations as all other properties in the development. The HOA demanded that Marcus bring his cabin into compliance with community standards within 30 days, or face legal action. The specific violations listed included an unapproved structure that did not meet architectural guidelines, landscaping that was not professionally maintained, and the presence of what they termed unsightly outbuildings. Marcus read the letter 3 times, trying to understand how his grandfather's cabin, which had stood on the same spot for 70 years, could suddenly be subject to rules established by a homeowners association he had never joined. He had never signed any agreement with the HOA, never attended any meetings, and never received any previous correspondence about community rules or regulations. The letter made no sense from a legal standpoint, and Marcus initially assumed it was some kind of mistake. He decided to drive over to the Pine Valley Estates sales office to speak with someone who could clarify the situation. The sales office was located in an impressive stone and timber building designed to complement the mountain architecture of the community. Inside, he found a receptionist who directed him to speak with the community manager, Lisa Roberts. Lisa was a professional woman in her 40s who wore an expensive business suit and spoke with the confidence of someone accustomed to getting her way. When Marcus explained his situation, Lisa pulled out a large map of the Pine Valley Estates development and pointed to a section that clearly showed his cabin property outlined in red. According to her records, the cabin was located within the boundaries of the Pine Valley Estates community and was therefore subject to all HOA rules and regulations. She explained that when the developers purchased the land for the community, they had acquired not just the building lots but also surrounding buffer zones to protect the investment of homeowners. Marcus pointed out that he had owned his property for 30 years and had never sold or transferred any rights to the developers. Lisa responded that property ownership was more complex than most people understood and that the developers had acquired various rights and easements that gave them authority over the entire area. She suggested that Marcus consult with an attorney if he wanted to challenge the HOA authority, but warned that legal action would be expensive and unlikely to succeed. The conversation left Marcus frustrated and confused, but not particularly worried. He was confident that his property ownership was clear and that no homeowners association could simply declare authority over land they did not own. He decided to ignore the letter and continue using his cabin, as he always had, assuming that the HOA would eventually realize their mistake and leave him alone. This assumption proved to be wrong. Over the following weeks, Marcus received a series of increasingly aggressive letters from the HOA attorney threatening legal action. If he did not comply with community standards, the letters demanded that Marcus submit architectural plans for approval, upgrade his landscaping to professional standards, and pay monthly HOA fees retroactive to the establishment of the association. The total amount demanded was over $15,000, plus ongoing monthly fees of $250. Marcus decided it was time to consult with his own attorney. He contacted James Mitchell, a lawyer who had handled legal matters for his surveying business for over 20 years. James was experienced in property law and had dealt with numerous boundary disputes and title issues. After reviewing the HOA letters and Marcus' deed, James agreed that the HOA claims appeared to be without merit, but recommended a thorough title search to identify any potential complications. The title search revealed what James described as a clean chain of ownership dating back to Marcus' grandfather original purchase in 1952. There were no liens, encumbrances, or transfers that would give the Pine Valley Estates developers any rights to Marcus's property. The survey records clearly showed that Marcus's cabin was located on his own land and was not within the boundaries of the Pine Valley Estates development. James prepared a response to the HOA attorney explaining these facts and demanding that all claims against Marcus's property be withdrawn. The HOA response was swift and aggressive. Rather than backing down, they escalated their campaign by filing a lawsuit in county court, claiming that Marcus's cabin was an unauthorized structure that violated community standards and demanding its removal. The lawsuit alleged that Marcus was operating an illegal residence within the Pine Valley Estates community and seeking monetary damages for the negative impact on surrounding property values. James was surprised by the aggressive tactics but remained confident in Marcus's legal position. Property rights were fundamental and well established in law, and the HOA could not simply claim authority over land they did not own. However, he warned Marcus that defending the lawsuit would require significant time and expense, and that the HOA appeared to have substantial financial resources to pursue their claims. The legal battle that followed was more intense than Marcus had anticipated. The HOA hired a large law firm from the state capital and filed numerous motions in discovery, requests designed to overwhelm Marcus with legal expenses. They demanded access to all of his property records, financial documents, and personal correspondence related to the cabin. They also sought court orders requiring Marcus to stop using his property until the dispute was resolved. Marcus found the legal process frustrating and expensive, but he was determined to defend his property rights. He had worked too hard and too long to allow a group of wealthy homeowners to intimidate him into giving up land that had been in his family for 70 years. James continued to represent him competently, but warned that the case could drag on for years if the HOA was determined to fight. The breakthrough came when James suggested that Marcus conduct a comprehensive survey of his property to establish the exact boundaries and identify any potential complications. As a professional surveyor, Marcus had the skills and equipment to perform this work himself, and he welcomed the opportunity to take a more active role in his defense. He spent several weeks mapping his property using the latest GPS technology. In comparing his results to historical records and deed descriptions, what Marcus discovered during this survey process would change everything. While reviewing his grandfather's original deed and supporting documents, he noticed references to mineral rights and subsurface ownership that he had never fully investigated. The language was technical and archaic, but it appeared that William Thompson had acquired not just surface rights to the cabin property, but also mineral rights and subsurface ownership to a much larger area. Marcus spent several days in the county courthouse researching historical records and tracking down the chain of ownership for the mineral rights and subsurface properties. What he found was astounding. His grandfather had not just purchased the 2 acres where the cabin sat, but had quietly acquired mineral rights, and in some cases full subsurface ownership to over 800 acres of surrounding land through a series of transactions in the 1940s and 1950s. The implications were staggering. If Marcus's interpretation of the records was correct, then he owned not just the cabin property, but also the mineral rights and subsurface ownership to most of the land where Pine Valley Estates had been built. The developers had purchased surface rights from various landowners, but had apparently never investigated the complex web of mineral rights and subsurface ownership that William Thompson had assembled decades earlier. Marcus brought his findings to James, who was initially skeptical, but agreed to have the documents reviewed by a specialist in mineral rights law. The specialist confirmed that the historical records appeared to show that Marcus's grandfather had indeed acquired extensive mineral rights and subsurface ownership through legitimate transactions that were properly recorded with the county. If these rights were still valid, then Marcus had a much stronger legal position than anyone had realized. The next step was to have the mineral rights and subsurface ownership professionally surveyed and mapped to determine the exact extent of Marcus' holdings. This was a complex and expensive process that required specialized equipment and expertise, but Marcus was determined to pursue it. He hired a team of specialists to conduct ground-penetrating radar surveys, geological assessments, and comprehensive boundary mapping of the entire area. The results exceeded even Marcus's optimistic expectations. The survey confirmed that he owned mineral rights and subsurface ownership to approximately 820 acres. Including virtually all of the land where Pine Valley Estates had been built. The developers had constructed their roads, utilities, and buildings on land where Marcus owned the subsurface rights, even though they had purchased surface rights from other landowners. This discovery completely transformed the legal dynamics of the case. Instead of being a defendant trying to protect his small cabin property, Marcus was now in a position to challenge the entire Pine Valley Estates development. The homeowners association that had been so aggressive in attacking his property rights had built their entire community on land where he owned significant subsurface rights. James immediately filed a countersuit against Pine Valley Estates and the Homeowners Association, claiming that they had trespassed on Marcus's subsurface property and demanding damages for the unauthorized use of his mineral rights. The countersuit also sought injunctive relief that could potentially halt all construction and development activities in the community until the ownership issues were resolved. The response from the Pine Valley Estates legal team was immediate and panicked. They demanded that Marcus provide detailed documentation of his mineral rights, claims, and threatened to seek sanctions for what they called frivolous litigation. However, their confident tone from earlier in the case had disappeared, and they began seeking opportunities to negotiate a settlement rather than continue fighting in court. Marcus was in no mood to negotiate. HOA had started this fight with their aggressive demands and threats to bulldoze his cabin, and he was determined to see it through to the end. He had discovered that he owned rights to land worth millions of dollars, and he was not about to let the Pine Valley Estates developers continue benefiting from their use of his property without proper compensation. The legal battle that followed was complex and intense. The Pine Valley Estates developers hired multiple law firms and brought in specialists in mineral rights law to challenge Marcus's claims. They argued that the historical records were outdated and invalid, that mineral rights had been abandoned through non-use, and that the community had been built in good faith based on clear surface title from legitimate landowners. Marcus' legal team countered with detailed historical research and expert testimony, demonstrating that the mineral rights and subsurface ownership were properly acquired and had never been abandoned or transferred. They showed that William Thompson had been a sophisticated businessman who understood exactly what he was purchasing and had followed all legal requirements for acquiring and maintaining his property rights. The case attracted attention from local media as word spread about the small cabin owner who was challenging an entire luxury development community. Reporters were fascinated by the David versus Goliath story of a retired surveyor taking on wealthy homeowners and powerful developers. The story was picked up by regional and eventually national media outlets, turning Marcus into an unlikely folk hero for property rights advocates. Public opinion was generally supportive of Marcus's position. Many people were frustrated with aggressive homeowners associations and sympathized with a man who was simply trying to protect property that had been in his family for generations. The fact that Marcus had discovered he owned valuable rights to land that developers had been using without permission made the story even more compelling. The legal proceedings dragged on for over a year, as both sides conducted extensive discovery and prepared for trial. Marcus was represented by a growing team of attorneys who were working on a contingency basis, confident they could win a substantial judgment. The Pine Valley Estates side continued to fight, but their position became increasingly difficult as more evidence emerged supporting Marcus' claims. The turning point came when the court ordered an independent survey and title examination to determine the validity of Marcus's mineral rights claims. The independent experts confirmed that Marcus owned legitimate mineral rights and subsurface ownership to most of the Pine Valley Estates property, and that these rights had never been transferred or abandoned. The court ruling left no doubt about the validity of Marcus's legal position. Faced with the prospect of a devastating court judgment, the Pine Valley Estates Developers and Homeowners Association finally agreed to serious settlement negotiations. Marcus now held all the leverage in the dispute and was in a position to demand substantial compensation for the years of unauthorized use of his property. The negotiations were conducted through mediators and took several months to complete. The final settlement was more generous than Marcus had ever imagined possible. The Pine Valley Estates developers agreed to pay him $12 million for a permanent easement, allowing them to continue operating their community on his subsurface property. In addition, they would pay annual fees of $500,000 for ongoing use of his mineral rights, and would be responsible for all of Marcus' legal expenses. The Homeowners Association was required to formally withdraw all claims against Marcus's cabin property and to acknowledge in writing that his property was not subject to any HOA rules or regulations. They also had to pay additional damages of $2 million for the harassment and legal expenses they had caused through their aggressive tactics. Marcus used a portion of the settlement money to completely renovate and modernize his cabin. While maintaining its rustic character and historical significance, the Pine Valley Estates community continued to operate, but under very different circumstances. The Homeowners Association became much more cautious about making aggressive demands or threatening legal action against neighbors. They had learned an expensive lesson about the importance of thoroughly investigating property rights before making claims against other landowners. Robert Wilson, the former HOA president, was voted out of office by homeowners who were angry about the expensive legal battle and settlement. The new leadership adopted a more collaborative approach to community management and established better relationships with surrounding property owners. They also implemented new procedures for investigating property rights before taking any enforcement actions. Lisa Roberts, the community manager, was terminated after homeowners learned about her role in escalating the conflict with Marcus. The HOA hired a new management company with specific experience in dealing with complex property rights issues and a mandate to avoid unnecessary legal conflicts. The community clubhouse now displays a plaque acknowledging the property rights of surrounding landowners. Marcus became something of a celebrity in property rights circles and was frequently invited to speak at conferences and seminars about the importance of thorough title research and historical record-keeping. His story was featured in numerous publications and became a case study taught in law schools and surveying programs. He used these opportunities to educate others about protecting their property rights and the dangers of aggressive homeowners associations. The legal precedent established by Marcus's case had broader implications for property development and homeowners association activities throughout the region. Developers became much more careful about investigating mineral rights and subsurface ownership before beginning construction projects. Homeowners associations became more cautious about making claims against neighboring properties without thorough legal research. Marcus also used his newfound wealth and influence to support other property owners who were facing similar challenges from aggressive developers or homeowners associations. He established a legal defense fund that provided assistance to small property owners who could not afford to hire attorneys to defend their rights. The fund has helped dozens of families protect their property from various forms of harassment and intimidation. The cabin property itself became a symbol of successful resistance to corporate overreach and HOA abuse. Marcus began offering tours of the property to groups interested in property rights issues and historical preservation. He also worked with local historians to document the complete history of his grandfather's land acquisitions and the legal strategies that made them so effective. Years later, Marcus still spends most weekends at his cabin enjoying the peace and solitude that had attracted him to the property in the first place. The surrounding Pine Valley Estates community is now a good neighbor that respects his property rights and maintains appropriate boundaries. The annual easement fees continued to provide him with substantial income while allowing the community to operate successfully. The story of Marcus Thompson and his battle with the Pine Valley Estates HOA became a legend in property rights circles and a cautionary tale for aggressive homeowners associations. It demonstrated that thorough research and determination could overcome even the most well-funded opposition, and that sometimes the little guy really can win against powerful corporate interests. Looking back, Marcus reflects that the entire experience taught him valuable lessons about the importance of understanding and protecting property rights. His grandfather William had been more prescient than anyone realized when he quietly assembled those mineral rights and subsurface holdings in the 1940s and 1950s. The foresight and legal acumen of a man who had been dead for 30 years had ultimately protected his family property and provided financial security for future generations. The cabin still sits in the same spot where William Thompson built it in 1952, surrounded by towering pine trees and granite outcroppings. It remains a simple structure by modern standards, but now represents something much more significant. It stands as a monument to the principle that property rights must be respected, and that even the most powerful opponents can be defeated when someone is willing to stand up for what is right. Marcus continues to maintain detailed records of all property transactions and legal documents, ensuring that future generations of his family will be able to protect their inheritance. He has also created comprehensive maps and surveys of the entire property, including both surface and subsurface boundaries. These records are stored in multiple locations, including digital copies that can never be lost or destroyed. The Pine Valley Estates community has matured into a successful development with property values that continue to appreciate. The annual easement fees that Marcus collects represent a small percentage of the community total property values, but provide him with substantial ongoing income. The relationship between Marcus and the community has evolved from hostile conflict to respectful coexistence. New residents in Pine Valley Estates are now informed about Marcus's property rights as part of their orientation to the community. HOA requires all new homeowners to acknowledge in writing that they understand and respect the rights of surrounding property owners. This education process has helped prevent future conflicts and maintains positive relationships throughout the area. Marcus has also worked with local government officials to improve property record keeping and make historical documents more accessible. Two researchers and property owners' experience demonstrated how important it is for people to understand the complete history of their property ownership and to maintain proper documentation of their rights. The legal victory also had personal significance for Marcus beyond the financial benefits. It validated his decision to stand up against intimidation and fight for his principles, even when the odds seemed overwhelming. The experience reinforced his belief that individuals can make a difference when they are willing to do the research and take action to protect their rights. Today, Marcus is recognized as an expert in property rights and mineral ownership issues. He frequently consults with attorneys and property owners who are facing similar challenges and provides expert testimony. In legal cases involving complex ownership issues, his reputation for thorough research and attention to detail has made him one of the most sought-after experts in his field. The story continues to inspire others who are facing pressure from developers, homeowners, associations, or other powerful interests. Marcus regularly receives correspondence from people who have read about his case and are seeking advice about their own property rights challenges. He tries to respond to as many of these requests as possible and often provides referrals to attorneys and other professionals who can help. The cabin property has also become a destination for people interested in property rights, history, and legal education. Marcus hosts an annual property rights symposium at the cabin where attorneys, surveyors, and property owners gather to discuss current issues and share strategies for protecting property rights. The event has grown into one of the most important gatherings of property rights advocates in the region. Marcus Thompson. Story proves that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary results when they combine thorough research with determination and persistence. His victory over the Pine Valley Estates HOA demonstrates that property rights remain fundamental to American law, and that even the most powerful opponents must respect legitimate ownership claims. The cabin that started as a simple mountain retreat has become a symbol of successful resistance to corporate overreach and a testament to the enduring importance of property rights in a free society.